welcome to Fox Valley in Focus. I'm your host, Barb Nadeau. On our show today, we have three guests. Tom Sikora, the Director of Emergency Management for the City of Sandwich. We've got Lieutenant Norm Allison from Plano Police, and a new sergeant, good familiar face with Plano Police, but a new sergeant, Gene Morton, on our show today. And we'll get started in just a moment.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Lieutenant Norm Allison starts us out on our show today. Norm, thanks so much for being on our show.
You're welcome. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you here, and I thought about it before the show. To have two of Plano's leaders in the police force here means everything is good on the home front.
That's right.
Everything's peaceful in the city of Plano right now.
Well, and it's good to have both of us here to talk to you and answer your questions and just get more information out to you. So.
Well, it's really wonderful. It's a great opportunity because I think people kind of put their police force, they know you're there, but they don't pay much attention to what's happening. And Plano Police has been very proactive as a department, I think, in taking care of a lot of things and looking at the structure, and you've made some recent changes. So I wanted to ask you about that.
We have. So the most recent thing, as you know, is the promotion of our investigator to the rank of sergeant. When they test for that, they create a list, and it just so happened that Gene was number one on that sergeant list. And talking between myself and Chief and a few other members of the department, it was time to make that new position of a sergeant of investigations. And with all the cases that were coming up, it was just time to make that plunge forward and create that new position in investigations so we can make room for another detective.
That actually changes your scheduling and everything in the department. And I know you've worked really hard on trying to make sure that you have a lot of coverage and full coverage at all times of the day.
It does, especially in the investigations division that we're trying to build, only because of the fact right now, with Gene's schedule and the different boards that he sits on, a lot of times he might be there till, say, 4, sometimes 5 in the evening, but our hope is to move somebody else into investigations, and then they can split that schedule to where maybe we might have an investigator there from 10 to 6 at night, to help if we have walk-ins for, say, a fraud in the lobby, that detective can be there to actually take that initial call
immediately,
instead of having a patrol officer take the call and then forward it to investigations.
Well, I think that's really interesting because whenever you have to, enlist the help of police as a person, as a homeowner, as a resident, you're kind of in a state of anxiety or hopefully not crisis, but you need to know that things are being handled quickly, and so that's really reassuring that you're doing all this for the city of Plano.
I think it is too, and patrol officers are well trained on the questions to ask, but it's really a unique skill set for a detective and their training and their background to where it might really help to have that investigator answer or ask those initial questions. That way you're getting all the information right off the bat.
I think it's interesting how much training you actually need, and now it's almost accelerated. Every day there's some new training you need, you have to keep going in your, every day there seems to be something new that you're being demanded to know about.
Well, absolutely, and there's mandated training by the state of Illinois and the federal government that police officers have to go through, but sometimes it's really reactive too. For instance, if we have a certain crime that comes up. I'll give an example of, say, a shaken baby case that maybe we've only had a few times in our careers, but then if an officer doesn't know how to handle that, then we create a department training and say, this is how you need to handle that when those rare circumstances come up. So training can be reactive, too.
Oh, that's so scary. You were talking to me right before the show, too, about something else that I didn't realize that you have available to you, and that is training that you're undergoing as officers, as the department itself, but also offering to the public on things like scams and elder abuse and financial fraud. And talk to me a little bit about that.
So that's what we want to get better at. It's I believe in problem-oriented policing, and so does my chief, to where there's a problem out there. How do we combat that so we can be proactive as well? you attack the problem as a whole, and how do you help the community? And that's one of the things that we talked about is financial exploitation of the elderly. We'll take those reports, or Jean as an investigator will take that report, but then how do we help the community so they don't fall for those scams? So we do a lot of PowerPoints and training in-house for our officers, but we want to reach the community as a whole to be more proactive when it comes to that stuff. And one of the things that maybe we can do is create these PowerPoints, have our new investigator and Jean as the sergeant of investigations go out to Deer Run and go out to other old folks' homes and present those trainings, but then maybe find a way to put it on the city website to be able to provide that to anybody that wants to learn from that.
So you really have to educate the senior population, which is always becoming a new population.
Sure.
But you also are trying to educate their caregivers, their loved ones. I think being a loved one, you say, this kind of is a little scary just because you're not doing anything wrong, but then you also don't want to have anyone ever doubt whether you're doing things right.
Well, yes.
So on all aspects of that, it's important.
Absolutely, and maybe even to teach them the signs to look for, the preemptive signs to say, I go to my mom's once a week, and then all of a sudden you start seeing checks laying out, you start seeing different bills laying out, or that's not the norm when you go over to visit, your mom or dad. All of a sudden, it elicits that conversation with them. Why do they have those bills and those financial documents? Why is the power of attorney paperwork laying out? And just to get that conversation going to figure out why, and to have that dialogue to maybe help them to avoid those scams.
Well, let me ask you, viewers to this show right now are wondering how they can get access to this information. Can they get you to come out and do a presentation? Can they see this PowerPoint?
Yeah, so once we have it up and running, we have the training ready to go, but it's just a matter of getting that second detective in there to present it. But in the very near future, once we have that going, I'd say April or May, we want to roll that out to the community as well. But in the meantime, before we present that, the health department in Kendall County is very good about providing information, and the Kendall County Triad as well. Because there's resources out there like Prairie State Legal that are there to help the elderly in a second. And that's some of the information we'll put in that training, but all these resources are there for people to reach out and get their questions answered.
I know that the Lakewood Springs subdivision recently reached out, and you responded in a big way coming to one of their HOA meetings, but that was not on an elder abuse issue. That was just being good neighbors and speeding, I think.
Well, that, and then we had a shots fired call out in Lakewood Springs, and so that really elicited a lot of conversation of what are the police doing when it comes to that type of crime. And so we wanted to go out and just talk to the HOA as a whole and kind of let them know the investigation process, let them know that sometimes the police have to have probable cause before they get a search warrant or to make an arrest, and just kind of explain the process, because a lot of times it's that immediate expectation of why wasn't there an arrest made, nothing's being done because there's not an arrest made. And so just like
they
you
don't
said,
understand that you're not going to make that arrest until you've really built your case, right?
Right, exactly. And a lot of times it's just that lack of knowledge that really we can't share our investigative processes, but in the same time, if they understand just a little bit more, it helps them out as well. So it was a really good meeting. I would say about maybe 20 to 30 people were there. They had good questions, but that's one thing that we love to do is go out and address the community, and it doesn't always have to be a shots fired call. It can be, this is what we're doing in Plano to try and help you guys. So.
Norm, I could talk to you all day. It's so important, everything you're talking about. But I'm going to let you go, and we're going to get Gene out here, and we're going to find out, his perception of his new position and what he's doing with Plano Police. So we'll do that in just a moment. Just hang on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Investigator Gene Morton, or Sergeant Gene Morton, joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So how long has it been since you were, just a couple weeks, that since you were gone from investigator to now sergeant in your
Correct.
position?
Yeah, that was on February 10th, so about 2 weeks ago.
How long have you been with Plano Police?
Just a little over 15 years now.
It seems like it was just yesterday.
Yeah, it really does.
It really does. And I think when you came to Plano Police, I think people wondered, do we need an investigator? But it seems like we really do, because you've been involved with cases not just in Plano, but you help in Kendall County, just with neighboring departments in all sorts of things.
Yeah, correct. So when I started in 2004, we didn't have any investigations at all in Plano, so it was every officer did their own cases, and kind of if they had a fraud or you know, any kind of case they could have, like a burglary, they would take care of pretty much doing the investigations. And then it was in late 2008 when the police department decided to make an investigator, and I tested for that spot and got it, and I've been in it since then. And as far as, you know, since 2008, Plano's investigations has really kind of, it's been very busy in there. And since we finally took on an investigator, it was an understanding at that time we really needed it pre that. But since 2008, we've been doing pretty good. So and I think it's time to move forward. And they promoted me to sergeant a couple weeks ago, and we're going to move another detective in the next month or so, and I'm really excited about that. So.
Well, how does that change your job to have two titles then? I mean, does that change your workflow or make it more difficult or make it easier?
So I'm still going to handle some cases, but there's going to be the new detective will handle primarily most of the cases, and I'll be focused more on the case management side of things. So I think that as far as busyness, I'll probably be the same, just the different tasks now.
This idea of case management is really important to you. You mentioned it right before we came on the air, and I wanted to ask you more about how that works.
Okay, so the case management aspect of things is, if you can imagine, when I was in there as an investigator just by myself, if I had 30 cases open, I would kind of know where they were at any given time. If I have another individual in there, and then also the school resource officer now falls under the investigative side of things, and they will handle any investigations that happen in the school, which there are quite a few. So if we have 3 people in there, myself included, without having a way to manage all 3 of us, if I understand where I'm at with my cases, but I wouldn't know where they are. So the case management side is more understanding where they are and kind of where we are as a police department during that investigation, so that things don't fall through the cracks and things don't get lost.
I had meant to ask Norm about the school resource officer and how that position works. Do you have one, or do you have more than one for the entire district? How does that work?
We have one school resource officer presently that handles the whole school district. He primarily stays at the high school. He has his office at the high school, but he's primarily between the high school, the middle school, and some at Emily Johns as well. But the other schools like P.H. Miller and Centennial, he'll go to them too as well. But there's not as many issues in those schools. And when I say issues, I don't mean like we have a bad school system. But when you get the older young adults, there's more issues like the vaping or maybe fights that might happen or.
But if you think
like that.
about having a school district, you know, a consolidated unit district, as District 88 is, and they have pre-K all the way through high school, and of course then they have kids who are maybe in special needs classes going all the way up to 21. You've got 3-year-olds to 21-year-olds and so many different issues, family issues, that they have to be aware of. And that school resource officer may be the first one to identify child abuse or you know, even in a younger, but also making a relationship with those younger folks that, you know, those small students that you're going to need that good relationship as they get older.
Absolutely. So I know that my chief, as we've talked about it several times, his philosophy on the school resource officer is it's got to be your best officer in the police department, one of your top guys. And just for the same reasons that you said that, because they do build those relationships with the kids. And if you can think about, we've had a lot of officers, and I can tell you Lieutenant Elson, who you just had on, was real big in that when he was a school resource officer. And to this day, I see it where adults now come to him that he had as kids, and they talk to him, or they'll give him information that maybe another officer they don't feel comfortable talking to. So it's a really important position.
It's interesting because I love hearing that you want that person to be the best.
Yes.
And I like that, that aspect that Plano Police is trying to be the best department, but to send the best person in there. But I think that also, Norm's experience as a school resource officer kind of formed him in how he acts with everybody for the rest of his policing career.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And like I said, I can't imagine, and I know that the school resource officer's only been around since, I think when I got hired in 2004, it was just before that when they started that. And I can't imagine that that we went that long without it. I mean, it's that important, it's that integral into what we do. And it really plays into investigations, it really plays a huge part, because without the buy-in from the students at the time and adults now, without citizens, we can't do our job.
Well, let me ask you about that. I know that you're on the City of Plano website that you can link right over to the police department, and I know
Yes.
that you've got a Facebook page.
Yes, we do.
Plano Police IL,
Yes,
right?
that's correct. Yes, correct.
Okay. So, but being a good citizen, everybody's posting all the time. Can you give us a best, worst case scenario, best, worst, behavior? Because I'm sure that people are helping you, and I think sometimes they're hindering you in your police work.
Yes, so the helpful aspect of the social media is a lot of times we'll put out, we may put out like a bulletin of somebody that we're looking for. Maybe they did a retail theft or maybe a battery or burglary. And a lot of citizens will reply, hey, this looks like so-and-so, and then we'll trace down the leads, which has been immensely helpful since we've had this Facebook page. But there's always a positive and there's a negative. The negative side to it is that we've had people try to run investigations through Facebook. And unfortunately, social media is not the place to run an investigation. And I would say that, not saying that the police are smarter, I truly, my philosophy is that the police are the people are the police. I feel that way. But I feel that there's some training that we've had in the investigative side of things that, and on social media, you just can't.
I think sometimes people just get on and banter, and
Yes,
they want to
sometimes
act
it is
like
that
they
way.
know something. But
Yes.
if they're bantering and maybe calling people out or posting
Right.
people's names, are they posting a name because they say, Sally, you need to know about this, or Sally, I think you're the perpetrator?
So I think both.
You just don't know, but they could be calling you.
Correct. And in the other aspect of the negative side is we've had it where, on some cases where we've went to interview people and they've already kind of known where we're coming from because of social media. And so it's kind of hindered it in that aspect of things.
So what's the best advice?
I would say the best advice is if we post something and you have information about it, contacting us, or you can always contact Kendall County Crime Stoppers, and if you want to be completely anonymous as well, and there's a reward for that if a tip leads to an arrest.
Oh, really? They still have a reward for
Absolutely.
the Crime Stoppers?
Yeah. And we
good
we
to know.
participate in that program, and but that's always a great way to do it. Or they could contact anybody at the police department or investigations at the police department. And we get a lot of tips from that. Maybe we put a post out that somebody doesn't want to put it on social media, but they could call us and leave a message, or we'll go and meet with them.
Okay. All right. This is just a joy to talk to you and hear more about what you're doing. And I think we need to have the Plano Police come back very soon, because you certainly can't get enough of what you have to offer for all of us. And thank you so much for what you do every day for all
Well, thank
of
you
us.
for having me.
And we're going to take a short break, and we're going to talk about severe weather and emergency preparedness right after this.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You look good, girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. Every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch. But the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork about paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides,
Take care.
we will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
We're finishing up our show today with Tom Sikora, a good friend and guest on our show, and he is the director of the Sandwich Emergency Management Agency. And Tom, how long have you been with Sandwich?
18 years now.
It seems hard to believe that it's been that long that you've been the EMA director for the city of Sandwich, but you've seen a lot in 18 years.
Yeah, it's been a lot of changes and a lot of transitions, just the way that we operate and the way things operate generally.
Well, just talking with Plano Police just before you came on the show, just the demand that people in your line of work, they in their line of work, have to constantly be with the newest information. You have to have the best training, and things get more and more complex.
Well, people have access to more information now. So consequently, well, for lack of a better term, you have to stay ahead of them.
Because they're all experts.
Yeah, well, yeah. Social media is full of experts.
That's interesting. You've told us before you are on social media. You've also got information on the city website. So tell us about those sites.
Well, we've kind of backed off the website with the time I put into social media. Plus, I do the city website.
So the basics are there.
Yeah.
But social media is now your bigger focus?
It's the focal point, yes. And we try to run everything through there.
What kind of things do you put on your social media posts?
It's primarily weather, but we go into any kind of personal preparedness. Right now, it's kind of a hot time with the issues with the coronavirus and what have you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in past interviews, we've talked a lot about emergency kits, et cetera. And I wanted to ask you about that, fears of infectious disease and also just being prepared. What are you telling people?
Well, I'm a big advocate of the same thing that Mom and Grandma told you. Wash your hands, cover your mouth when you cough, and you've got about half of it taken care of. This way you lessen the spread by not putting cough droplets in the air, plus you don't communicate it to yourself through things you touch or pick up.
Oh, now see, there you go. That's the other part. People are thinking, well, yeah, if the person's coughing is giving it to me, but as you said, we have to make sure that we don't take it on to ourselves.
Yeah, just wash your hands correctly, and that's half the battle.
As far as sheltering in place and things like that, I think that what we're hearing, it's all across the board as far as, how we're supposed to behave. And
it hasn't solidified yet. Really, we haven't seen it in this country yet. They've got a little taste of it out west, and they've got a couple of cases that haven't picked it up through not direct contact with somebody, just airborne, and that could get a little dicey as time goes on. We're just at the front end of this. So.
Right, and I have a feeling, it sounds like it's going to be a severe infection, and for some people very severe, or maybe it's just going to be an annoyance for some people who are incredibly healthy, and they can be thankful for that, but it's going to become part of our new normal maybe for the future.
Well, this is another agile little virus that mutates. So who knows, in a couple of years it may move on to a different form and we'll be worrying about something else. But once again, it's the very old and the very young that are going to be affected the most. 80% of the people, so we're told by CDC and what have you, might get it and not even know it.
Interesting. I had to smile. I looked on the recent email that you sent me back, and at the bottom of your email, you always say, at the end of the day, you are responsible for yourself and your own safety. We're here to help. That's your motto.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It just came to mind when I was back in Calumet City. We can't do everything for everybody, and that's a realization I came to a long time ago. If you don't get to that point, you'll make yourself crazy trying to do things that are out of your control. But we can certainly help and give you direction.
So calm your fears and be prepared.
That's right. Information is your best friend.
Information and then taking that
Well,
time, right?
Good information. There's, again, there's a high noise level out there because of social media.
Do groups reach out to your office, maybe, I'm thinking school groups or scout groups, or are you available if they do reach out to you?
Gee, I wish they would, because I'll tell you, I will go wherever I am asked. And I will tailor the presentation to the audience. We'll go in the direction they want to. And perhaps we'll all come away and learn something.
I think sometimes it's the young that you have to teach, because the young will bring it home to their parents and their grandparents and reteach them and remind their folks what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. You get the little ones, they're like wire recorders. They take that right back home and regurgitate it in front of mom and dad.
So we started talking out about the weather right before we went on the air today, and we had kind of a mild winter.
Lucky.
Are you a prognosticator for the spring and summer?
I have learned a long time ago that just like the financial guys, past performance is no guarantee of future results.
Okay, so you're not going to tell us.
Oh, absolutely
like the groundhog,
not.
you're not going to tell
No,
us what kind of spring
because
we're
they're
gonna have.
hanging him up someplace and beating him right now. So.
Okay. Well, we have, March, we're still in winter, and anything could happen in this next
Well,
month, right?
meteorological spring begins the 1st of March.
What does that mean exactly? As
The
opposed
weather?
to like the vernal equinox or whatever, and the
Well, the equinoxes are based on astrological things.
All right, so that's just timing.
Yeah, and they
okay.
had to make sharp divisions for record-keeping cases. So that's why they go sharply on the quarters for
Okay.
the change of seasons. It makes life easier for the Weather Service as far as being able to recall.
Okay, so what's the difference between the astrological spring and the meteorological spring?
Absolutely nothing, except that the astrological
different.
spring wobbles around. It could go from, the 21st to the 23rd.
Okay,
But when you decide on a hard first of the month, that makes your record keeping simpler. And really, that's what it's all about, keeping the
Okay.
numbers straight.
but the weather, who knows?
It does what it will.
Okay, so again, severe weather coming up. We do want to take those warnings seriously. We want to listen. If we have a weather radio, we should get a weather
We
radio.
need to get a weather radio. If you
Okay.
don't have one, get it. Please, please, please.
And you were talking about social media. The posts all come from people who did not follow proper guidelines. That's how people get in trouble.
Well, that's it. If you realize that you're in trouble, you've already done too many things wrong. It's as simple as that. And once again, there are some incredible people out there on social media. Now that we have these computer models available to everyone, there are people for self-aggrandizement or whatever will focus on the one that gives the worst case, post it out there and say, this is what we're going to get. We've watched this all winter, and I make a campaign about things like that. It's just wait, see, don't take the first model.
Okay, wait, see, relax, be calm,
And
use your head.
take the good information from the Weather Service or a known good forecast.
Okay, well, that's really important because, so we sometimes take for granted. We live in Tornado Alley, so to speak.
A secondary one, yes.
We just take it for granted. So I think you've given us some really good advice today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always nice talking to you. And again, you've got all the basics of weather preparedness and personal preparedness on your website. And I want to thank you for coming and talking about it.
That's no problem. I always enjoy coming here.
All right, and that'll do it for today. We'll see you next time on Fox Valley Television.